When you enter the middle school at Roland Park Country School, you have the option to switch languages. The options are Spanish, French, and Chinese. The first two, Spanish and French, are ordinary. You can take one or the other for all of 6 years. Chinese is the road less traveled. This road has low-hanging vines, overgrown shrubs, and may or may not have creatures of unknown origins looming around each turn. As a 5th grader, you have the choice of starting a middle school Chinese class. I, of course, jumped at the idea that I could take a true foreign language. My mother spoke Spanish around the house, and I had taken French as a kindergartner. To me, seeing a Frere Jacques 100 times a day did not quite count as mastering a language. Walking into the Chinese room for the first time, I remember thinking that the room smelled terrible. In addition to the Chinese classes, the 8th grade Latin classes were held in the same classroom. Half the room was decorated with Chinese characters that hung from the ceiling, calligraphy, and maps that showed the mountainous aspects of China. Above the Chinese teacher Chang Lao's desk, taped onto the wall, were common questions that someone might ask in class, but may have trouble remembering how to say in Chinese. The questions were typed on paper with opinion, pictures, and tones. Almost as if there was an imaginary line dividing the room in half, the line teacher had decorated her side of the room. She had put up posters of Rome and Mount Vesuvius. Sitting next to the middle schoolers that had already made the transition to Chinese, the 7th and 5th graders took their seats waiting for the class to begin. Then Chang Lao started the class by saying, "Shan Ke Le, Shan Ke Le." Class has started. The class then responded with, "Lao Shi Hao," hello teacher. Little did I know that would be my morning routine for the next 3 years of my middle school career. Chang Lao structured the class around us shadows, which I thought was interesting. We learned basic things like how to say, "Ni hao ma," hello, how are you? We also learned how to count the numbers 1 through 10. There is no Chinese alphabet, but they do have different sounds, which Chang Lao conveniently had on a poster on the wall. Chang Chao Jia, Mrs. Chang, taught us how to pronounce the different groupings of letters, and we repeated them over and over again. Not quite sure if I was fully on board with taking Chinese, I walked away with the impression that the course would be a good experience. At the end of the day, my homeroom teacher, Mr. McKnight, asked me to stay behind for a couple of minutes to talk about the Chinese class. He was the teacher that recommended I shadow the Chinese class in the first place. After everyone had gone down to carpool, he proceeded to ask me questions about how I felt about the Chinese class experience. I told him that I thought the class was interesting and that I was seriously considering taking Chinese in middle school. Interpreting the conversation as, I was totally on board with taking Chinese, Mr. McKnight signed me up for Chinese. At this time, I had no idea that my language had already been decided for me for the next 3 years of my life. In September, school began and the teacher handed us our schedules. When I looked at it, I assumed I was going to see Spanish. Instead, I saw Chinese first period every day. I had to take a second look to make sure that I was seeing it right. After blinking once or twice, I began to search my memories trying to remember when I signed up for Chinese. It dawned on me that back in 5th grade, when Mr. McKnight asked me a question about whether or not I liked Chinese, he was asking me so that he could sign me up. I felt stupid because I let someone sign me up for a class I was now certain I did not want to take. As soon as I saw that my schedule said Chinese, I went to my advisor, Mrs. Tiplady, and told her that there was a mistake. Later that night, my mom informed me that my school would not switch me back to Spanish. My first thought is, this is not happening. I refuse to take Chinese for 3 years in that stinky room. At that time, I did not understand the wonderful path that my 5th grade homeroom teacher had paved for me. I could not see past the anger that I had against Mr. McKnight for making a decision on my behalf without my consent. It was not until I was taking the placement test for 9th grade Chinese at McDonald last summer that I realized how much taking Chinese benefited me. I learned that I should always be open to the decisions the adults around me make because most of the time they are making those decisions to benefit me.